The rain was coming down so hard that Daniel Carter could barely see the road ahead, but he still noticed the woman lying beside a fallen motorcycle on the shoulder. Most drivers slowed down, stared, and kept going. Daniel didn't. He pulled his old pickup onto the muddy shoulder, jumped out without thinking about the rain soaking his clothes, and ran toward her. He had no idea that the stranger he was about to help was one of the wealthiest women in the country, and that his simple act of kindness would eventually change both their lives forever. Daniel was 38 years old, a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Emily, in a small rented house on the edge of town. Life had not been gentle with him. His wife, Rachel, had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving Daniel to become a father, mother, cook, driver, homework helper, and protector all at once. He worked long shifts repairing heating and cooling systems, often coming home exhausted, but he never complained in front of Emily. She was the reason he kept moving. If stories about ordinary people choosing kindness mean something to you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Studio. Sometimes one small act of compassion can change a life in ways we never see coming. That stormy evening, Daniel found the woman struggling to sit up beside her motorcycle. She looked to be in her early 30s, wearing a black riding jacket, jeans, and muddy boots. Her helmet had rolled several feet away. She had a cut above her eyebrow, but she was conscious. Daniel immediately asked if she could move her arms and legs. When she nodded, he carefully helped her away from the motorcycle and beneath the small shelter of a nearby tree. The woman introduced herself as Claire Morgan. What Daniel didn't know was that Claire Morgan wasn't simply a woman taking a motorcycle ride during a storm. She was the secret owner of Morgan Global, a technology and real estate empire worth billions. For the past year, Claire had been exhausted by people treating her like a bank account instead of a human being. Men approached her because of her wealth, relatives constantly asked for favors, and even people she considered friends seemed interested in what she could provide. So she had made a strange decision. She sold the expensive car she normally traveled in, bought a modest motorcycle under another name, and began visiting small towns without security, assistance, designer clothes, or anyone knowing who she was. She wanted to discover whether someone could care about Claire before knowing about the billionaire. That night, she had finally found the one person who seemed to care without asking who she was. Daniel called an ambulance, but Claire insisted she didn't need one. She was embarrassed and worried about being recognized if she went to a hospital. Daniel didn't understand why she was so nervous, but he respected her decision after making sure her injury wasn't severe. He noticed she was shivering, so he took off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Then he did something that surprised her even more. He checked his watch and suddenly remembered Emily was waiting at home. Daniel apologized, explaining that his daughter was alone with a neighbor watching her temporarily, and he needed to get back. But instead of simply leaving, he called the neighbor, explained the situation, and arranged for Emily to stay there longer. Then he returned to Claire. She stared at him in disbelief. She had expected him to leave once he knew she was safe. Daniel simply said that nobody should be left alone on a dangerous road in the middle of a storm. The words stayed with her. Daniel eventually drove Claire into town. He refused the money she tried to give him for his help. When she offered to pay for repairs to his truck because she had noticed its worn tires, he smiled and declined again. He told her he hadn't helped her because he expected something in return. Claire had heard thousands of polite words in her life, but those were the first that felt completely honest. The next morning, Claire visited the small repair shop where Daniel worked. She wanted to thank him properly, but she also wanted to see whether the kindness from the previous night had been real or simply an emotional reaction to the circumstances. Daniel was underneath a broken air conditioning unit when she arrived. He looked exhausted, his hands covered in grease, but when he saw her, he smiled. Claire asked if he would accept dinner as a thank you. Daniel hesitated. He explained that he couldn't afford expensive restaurants and had to be home by 7 because Emily had a school project. Claire smiled and suggested they simply get pizza. That simple meal became the beginning of something neither expected. Claire met Emily, and the little girl immediately liked her. She showed Claire her drawings, her school trophies, and a collection of colorful stones she kept in a glass jar. Claire listened to every story as though there were nothing more important in the world. Daniel watched quietly. He hadn't seen Emily laugh that freely with a stranger in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Claire became a familiar part of their lives. She helped Emily with a science project, brought groceries when Daniel was working late, and sometimes joined them for simple dinners. Daniel never asked about her finances or family background. He didn't seem interested in what kind of house she owned or what car she drove. And that was exactly what terrified Claire. For the first time, she was beginning to fall in love with someone who had no idea how wealthy she really was. But secrets have a way of finding the light. One afternoon, Daniel saw Claire's photograph on a business news website while repairing a computer in the shop. He froze. The woman standing beside the motorcycle wasn't simply Claire Morgan. She was the billionaire CEO whose company had recently purchased half the commercial district downtown. Daniel felt betrayed. When Claire arrived that evening, he confronted her. She didn't try to deny it. Instead, she finally told him everything: why she had hidden her identity, how lonely her wealth had made her, and how terrified she was that he would look at her differently. Daniel was hurt, but not because she was rich. He was hurt because he thought she didn't trust him enough to tell him the truth. For several days, they stayed apart. Then Daniel received a phone call from Claire's assistant. Claire had been injured in another motorcycle accident while trying to return to the road where they had first met. She was safe, but she was shaken. Daniel immediately drove to the hospital. When he entered her room, Claire looked at him with tears in her eyes. Daniel sat beside her and quietly took her hand. He told her he didn't care about the billions, the company, or the mansion. What mattered was the woman who had sat at his kitchen table helping Emily with homework and laughing over burnt pizza. Claire cried because those were the words she had been waiting years to hear. Daniel realized something too. Love wasn't supposed to be about finding someone without problems. It was about finding someone willing to face those problems beside you. Months later, Claire sold her mansion and moved closer to Daniel and Emily. She didn't abandon her business; instead, she changed the way she lived. She created a foundation for single parents who struggled after losing a spouse, quietly funding childcare, education, and emergency housing. Daniel continued working, although Claire eventually convinced him to open his own repair company. Emily became the center of their little family, and Claire never tried to replace her mother. She simply became another person who loved her deeply. A year after their first meeting, Daniel took Claire back to the same roadside where he had found her in the rain. The motorcycle was gone, the storm was only a memory, and the road was quiet beneath a clear evening sky. Daniel reminded her that he had once thought he was simply helping a stranger. Claire smiled and told him that he had given her something far more valuable than money. He had given her proof that genuine love could still exist. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still matters, and subscribe to Kindness Studio. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about love, hope, kindness, and second chances. Before we end, I have one special request: comment, "Kindness finds its way back," if you believe that the good we give to others can someday return to us in the most unexpected way. Daniel had stopped that rainy night because he saw someone who needed help. He didn't know she was a billionaire. He didn't know she was searching for love. He didn't know that one decision would bring a new mother figure into his daughter's life and a new beginning into his own. He simply saw a human being in trouble, and chose to stop. Sometimes, the greatest rewards in life don't arrive wrapped in money or success. Sometimes they arrive quietly, on a rainy roadside, wearing a motorcycle helmet, waiting for someone kind enough to stop.